Darren, would you like to take the roll call, please?
Mr. Crowell,
Here.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Here.
Mr. Fuji,
Here.
Mrs. Nix,
Here.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Here.
and Miss Ernst.
Here.
Item number 6, minutes. It is recommended the board approve the minutes of the October 20 and November 10 regularly scheduled meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Crowe, one item on the minutes under 10/20, 2022, the discussion about the ad hoc committee that you chartered for the RFP for legal services
Yes.
isn't necessarily spelled out in there. I did let Mr. McLean know earlier. I think that we should probably add that as it has a purpose and just in order to designate who was on that ad hoc committee under item number 11.
Okay.
But other than that, I didn't have any other issues.
Any other questions? Comments? Darren, if you'd like to take the vote.
I have a note here to add the ad hoc committee to those minutes, so it will be approving those minutes as amended, right?
Yep.
Sure.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Miss Ernst.
Yes.
Item number 7, recognitions. We've got 4 tonight. And Mr. Fuji will do the first. Grant Colson.
Do you not have
Is it under?
No, the microphone. I'm sorry. Sorry,
Oh.
just one more second.
Handheld.
I apologize. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a real privilege for me. Oftentimes, I have the opportunity, Mr. Colson, to recognize students a little bit younger than yourself. And while it is an honor, I think either the opportunity to be up here in front of a crowd or maybe it's my ugly mug that kind of causes some anxiety for them from time to time. I'm confident that's not happening here.
No.
All right. I understand your favorite class is AP Computer Science. You love coding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. The other thing I think I know about you is that your peers really love the fact that you talk a lot and have the opportunity to talk in order to be understood and debate and understand as well. Is that correct?
That's right.
We have that in common. In fact, I often get emails after these meetings about people who really like to hear me talk. I'm just kidding. I don't, but that's not going to, see, that was funny. It's not going to change anyway. I'm sorry. Okay, that's the end of my comedy routine. I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to the audience, as well as my colleagues on the board, Mr. Grant Goodwin Colson. And let me just say this from my own knowledge. Grant is a superlative student in every sense of the word. Anything that you can think of positively, I assure you, is written on this sheet somewhere. That's the type of character of this young man. Grant is a senior at Big Walnut High School. He's the son of Jay and Laura Colson. Has 2 sisters, Madeline, who graduated in 2020.
That's right. Yeah.
UC.
Yes.
And Audrey, who's an 8th grader.
Yes.
Yes, all right, good stuff. So you guys won't be in high school together. That's a bummer. Okay. After graduation, oh, you don't mind?
I don't mind.
Okay, so you're going to start your own comedy routine now. After graduation, you want to explain your plans?
Sure. Yeah. I plan to go to school. Not sure where yet. I do want to study political science with the long-term goal of being a public servant in some capacity, perhaps similar to Mr. Fuji here.
Well beyond. That's kind of you to say, sir. And in that idea of public service, you also were a student who attended Buckeye Boys State this past summer.
That's right.
And between junior and senior year, 1 or 2 students from every high school across the state of Ohio has the opportunity to attend Buckeye Boys State. Do you want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure. Yeah, Buckeye Boys State. It's a group. It's a week-long camp where high school boys from across the state. There's also a girls' state. They come together and they form a mock state government. So we elect a governor, secretary of state, attorney general, a legislature as well. So that was a very great experience. I ended up working in the governor's cabinet for the week. I was the director of mental health and addiction services, so I had the opportunity to kind of engage with a few of the real workers from that department, and I learned a lot, and it was a great experience.
Thank you very much, sir. And while it might seem like I put Grant on the spot, I assure you I did not. I happened to be present as he presented to the American Legion the same conversation in expressing his gratitude. In addition, I mentioned to you that he was a superlative student, right? In addition, Grant is the president of Student Council, creates a positive environment. I see Ms. Ernst shaking her head in affirmation. Creates a positive environment for all students where they're encouraged to participate in the high school and make it a memorable experience. In addition to that, Grant is an all-academic, all-OCC award winner and two-time captain for the football team. Grant carries a GPA of 4.35. Pretty legitimate, right? Superlative. I also understand, Grant, that you started to, I see Mr. Jados in the back, that you approached him and started to develop something called Inspire Day.
That's correct.
Could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so Inspire Day at the high school, we had our first one last year. Really, it's an opportunity for students to engage with teachers just in a way that's outside of the normal classroom bounds. Really, Student Council proposed this, and teachers can submit their activities. They can teach about pretty much anything in any way.
How to cook a steak?
That's correct, yes. Mr. Page taught students how to cook a steak last year, and that's actually a great example of kind of the engagement we're looking for. So students have the opportunity to sign up for 2 Inspire Day periods. Our next one is coming up on December 7th. I believe Sophie will kind of touch on that later. Yeah, we're really looking forward to having our second ever Inspire Day. And that's something that I was very happy to help produce along with Student Council last year.
Well done, thank you. A few comments then from his teachers. One, I have never had Grant in class, but I've gotten to witness his leadership and integrity. The story goes on to talk about as students were decorating the halls in the high school, the senior class maybe finished because of leadership and, precision a little bit before the rest of the classes. Grant went down, helped the freshmen complete their project, stayed with them, and even helped them clean up. Grant, this is another quote from a teacher, Grant is the most mature, thoughtful, and best leader I've ever had the pleasure to know as a student here at Big Walnut High School. Here's the actual statement from an educator. I hope when my sons grow up, they can be like Grant Colson. Grant Colson's article in my Journalism 1 class was so impressive that I asked him to share it as a contributing writer for the recent Rage Page issue. He wrote a beautiful feature, and his work in my class has inspired other students going above and beyond on all projects that I give him. Can you share a little bit about that article?
Sure. It was an article about one of our new assistant football coaches, Coach Nate Hall. He's actually a student teacher at the high school right now. He teaches teaches government, and really since he's younger, he seems to be able to connect with the students and players in a way that maybe somebody like Coach Page just isn't able to do because Coach Page is older. He has more experience. It wasn't that long ago that Coach Hall was playing football himself. So I kind of took that and spun it into an article, and I was really happy with how it turned out.
Well done, thank you. And just for the audience, Coach Page is also very young, right?
Well,
okay, thank you. Thank you. We've gotten 2 very good laughs. The last 2 comments that I'll share, there is no one in the high school that works harder and pays more attention to the tasks that they're assigned than Grant Colson. And finally, I think this one's important. I've taught 30 years. Grant is a standout of all the students I've had the pleasure of knowing. He achieves in the classroom. He excels in leadership. He excels at what he does. Adults can learn from his willingness to speak in front of others and promote a cause. To that end, I joked a little bit about the beginning that we both like to talk. I hope that you will continue to do so. In fact, I hope you will continue to talk, to be heard, to listen, to understand, and then to take action, because in our world, that's how change happens. We need you. Congratulations. We have a little token.
thank you.
A clean copy without my scribbles, and then a nice little memento. Thank you. Congratulations.
Next, we have Adeline Schultz. Hi. Tell me what you go by.
Adeline.
Adeline, I have quite a story here about you. From Prairie Run and the people there at the school. Sounds like you are quite a star. They said Prairie Run is, I'll get it right in a minute. Prairie Run Elementary is proud to honor our student of the month, Addie Schultz. Now, they've got Addie down here. Is that what they call you at school? Okay. According to her teachers, Addie is an extremely hardworking student. She does about her business and gets the job done in a manner that is quite quiet and professional. She is a great example of what it means to be a student, but remain a kid at heart. Her laugh is undeniably contagious. Others seem to enjoy her company wherever she is, and she has a kind soul and is willing to help others no matter what the situation. Tell me how you help some of your friends.
When people like at recess they fall down, like everybody's just standing there like huddled around them, like asking if they're okay. I go and tell a teacher.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. At school, Addie loves seeing all of her friends, her teachers, and her principal. She enjoys math, switching for classes, being independent, and her favorite PRE events include the homecoming parade, Veterans Day, and treasure hunts. Tell me about treasure hunts.
We did a treasure hunt where you went around the school, and it was like for October, and like you had to like read clues and find out which room that was, and then you got like tiny prizes for everywhere you went.
So there were things hidden all around the school you had to find?
Yes.
Okay. What is your favorite thing about Veterans Day?
I like staying in front of all the veterans and seeing different veterans and hearing like other grades talk about stuff about Veterans Day.
Sounds like you are quite a role model. As Addie progresses as a Big Walnut Eagle, she hopes to continue to play lacrosse and learn algebra. When she grows up, Addie wants to be a librarian. Tell me about being a librarian.
I love to read and I like to be like quiet and like independent.
Very, very, very awesome. Like to read. What's your favorite book?
Harry Potter.
Good choice. In her free time, Addie loves to play kickball and camp with her family, and that includes her mom, her dad, and 3 Big Walnut siblings, Ethan, Emma, and Cole. Tubing on their family boat and doing the camp activities such as tie-dye is among her favorite things to do, in addition to reading, here it is, her Harry Potter books. Addie is a gracious, happy, kind, hardworking, and thoughtful young girl, and PRE wishes her all the best as she leaves the nest of elementary school. Where are you going?
The intermediate.
And she soars in the next Big Walnut schools. We will always be rooting for you, Addie. Prairie Run Elementary is proud to honor our student of the month, Addie Schultz. According to her teachers, Addie is an extremely hardworking student. She goes about her business and gets the job done in a manner that is quiet and professional. She is a great example of what it means to be a student, but remains a kid at heart. At school, Addie loves seeing all of her friends, her teachers, and her principal, and she enjoys math, switching classes, being independent, and her favorite PRE events. Tell me why you want to study algebra.
Because I'm really good at math, I think it would be fun.
Ooh, everybody give a clap for that one. Addie is a gracious, happy, kind, hardworking, and thoughtful young girl, and PRE wishes her all the best as she leaves this nest. Addie, congratulations. You should be very proud of all you've done. I have something special for you. Come on over here. Yeah. Here you go. Congrats. Can I give you a hug?
Next, we have Clarice Butler from the ELC. can come up here. Clarice? Where do you want to stand? Should we stand right here? Do you want to look at these people? Do you want to look that way? Do you want to sit in the chair? Awesome. So you are at the ELC, is that right?
I will. And you? Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Well, being able to give this to you, a student at the ELC, is really special for me because my first introduction to Big Walnut was the ELC. One of my daughters went to the ELC too, and she had the best time. Do you enjoy preschool?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm going to tell everyone here a little bit about you, if that's okay. The Early Learning Center is proud to have Clarice Butler represent our school as the School Board Student of the Month. Clarice is a sweet student with such a big heart. This little star finds her way through every challenge she is presented with. She's full of hugs and smiles. We are lucky to have her at the ELC. Everyone knows Clarice in our building. She walks down the halls, and both teachers and students greet her with a smile and a hug. She is smart, fun, caring, and a favorite friend to almost every child. Clarice Butler has been a student in our preschool program since March of 2021. Throughout her time in our program, we have seen her grow and blossom beyond measure. It sounds like you have made a lot of progress since you started school at the ELC. And now your teachers say that when we look at Clarice now, we see a child who has formed friendships, follows school routines, identifies her feelings, seeks comfort from trusted adults, and is rocking her academic schoolwork. But the biggest part is she is communicating and connecting with us. She greets her friends and her teachers. She plays with her friends. She checks on them when they get hurt. She asks for her wants and her needs. And she lets us know when she does not want something. This is huge progress for our girl. We are very proud of her. So congratulations, Clarice. Do you want to get your eagle? Okay, watch the cord. Step over it.
Okay, could we have Camden Hafner come on up? Sorry about that. Okay. We're going to give you this certificate, but you have been presented our Art Student of the Month, and I would like to hear all about this. Could you hold that up, or your mom? And so this says that you're in Prairie Run, 3rd grade, and this is your Matisse-inspired paper cut. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And I can hold it, and you can speak. Oh, boy. Or I'll hold it. Or if you want to speak.
It's a picture of cut up of organic and I forget the other kind of shape, what it's called. And it is supposed to, organic shapes are shapes of nature, and you can't really tell what they're supposed to be. And the other name for the other shape, which I still forget, geometric shape is like circles, squares, and triangles. And
I used red, orange, and black. I don't really know why I picked those colors. Just I thought they looked nice together. And yeah.
So, did you pick out Matisse, or did you know anything about it, or you just thought it was fun? And
I just thought it was fun. I had no idea who he was at first.
what's your favorite subject in school?
Probably math.
Mr. Fuji would like that. Well, we want to say this is great. We want to honor you today, and we have a little certificate, and we'd also like to honor you by putting this up on display. Would you let us do that?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to read your certificate of recognition for being named Art Student of the Month. The Big Walnut Local Schools hereby recognizes this outstanding achievement. Your hard work and dedication reflects great credit upon yourself, the Big Walnut School District, and the entire Big Walnut community. What do you think about that?
Yay!
All right. Have fun. Have fun with art. Have fun with math. That is for you. Thank you.
That'll take us to item number 8, Superintendent's Report. Ryan?
Yeah, and before I get started, any student that was recognized, if you'll head next door with Ms. Foreman, she will get a picture, and then you are free to exit stage left unless you want to come back.
Actually, we stage right. But
Stage right for you. We had one other student, Mallory Kish. She was the Big Walnut High School Student of the Month, but she was working this evening, so we will be honoring her in December.
I don't know that we've ever had an audience participant be as excited to be here at this meeting than the one we just acknowledged.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Before I get into the stated items on the superintendent's report, I just want to make sure I take an opportunity to continue to celebrate our students as we just did. Our fall sports season is now officially at a conclusion, and everyone knows that our football team had a phenomenal run this year, and they are very deserving of all of the recognition and accolades. But it was a successful, award-winning season for many of our programs. Boys and girls soccer, our volleyball team did well. As I mentioned, I believe last month we had success. Boys and girls golf, our cross-country runners, and then the support that our students gave one another, the cheerleaders, the band, the Rage Cage. It was just a phenomenal fall, a very, very fun fall to be the superintendent of. One of the items that was mentioned by, I believe, Adeline, was I want to recognize our Veterans Day programs and all of our veterans. That is always a special program for all of our kids. I remember that. That's one of the things that I remember from my previous stop here at Big Walnut was just each one of those events, the pride that the kids take in preparing for that program, participating in that program, whether it's reading an essay they wrote or singing, the amount of time that our staff and community puts into that. We had a great breakfast at the middle school that couldn't have been done without the generous donations of so many people and local businesses, and we appreciate that event so much. The veterans that come, the families that come, that are able to, if we made it unlimited, we would violate every fire code known to man. Just great program, and can't thank everyone enough for those. And finally, before I get into my stated items, We've got great things happening in our classrooms. Just yesterday, I had a chance to go visit GRE, popped in unannounced to Mrs. Hilton's room, and I don't know how many teachers appreciate when the superintendent pops in unannounced, but I needed to get out into some classrooms to remind me of why I do this, and it took about a half a second to remind me why I do this. She welcomed me into the class, asked if I wanted to participate in the multiplication facts. Unlike some of our students of the month, math was not my favorite subject, despite the fact that my dad was a math teacher. Maybe there was a correlation there. But 3 students welcomed me to play in their game, multiplication baseball. One kid was like, "I think I know who you are." The other 2 had no clue, but they welcomed me like I was any new kid to the class, and we had a blast. My partner Corbin and I had a big run in multiplication baseball in the bottom of the last inning to secure a 9-8 win, so that was the highlight of my day. Moving on to items on the agenda for my report, I did want to update not only the board, but the community of 2 items. One, the book committee. The book committee met at the high school on October 26th. The committee, as is described in the board policy, consisted of staff members and community members. In this particular committee, we sent an email out to parents and guardians of the students who were in the high school class in which Looking for Alaska was being read. Based on those who responded, we used a random number generator to select 2 parent representatives. The committee met, and we essentially went through separate rubrics, one for whether or not the book was appropriate to be in our high school library, and a second to determine if it was appropriate to be included in a class as a curriculum material. Throughout the process, each member participated and shared their thoughts, and the recommendation of the committee was to allow Looking for Alaska to remain in the high school library, as well as to allow it to continue to be a curriculum material in the high school English class. The committee also expressed the feeling that they supported and appreciated the fact that the book was not required reading for all students. So someone who is not comfortable with the book still had the opportunity for another option. Moving on to my next topic in my report, caps and gowns. I would like to address the decision for caps and gowns at this year's Big Walnut High School graduation. Back in September, we had 3 students who are members of the Girl Scouts who spoke during public participation about their desire to see Big Walnut change to one color for graduation. Actually, shortly after being named superintendent this summer, I received an email from a parent who expressed a similar desire. So this topic was on my radar. In conversations I had with Mr. Jados, our high school principal, we both believe strongly that the graduating seniors should have a say in this. If there was an overwhelming desire from them to switch to one color, I was open to exploring that option. After the September 15th meeting, I met with Mr. Jados and our staff member who oversees student council at the high school and the graduation ceremony. Talks then took place with our student council, and from there, they discussed and informally gauged the opinions from the senior class. It was reported back to me that there was not a strong desire by the senior class to switch to one color. I had multiple people approach me following the September 15th board meeting, essentially stating while they could appreciate what the students said at the board meeting, they wanted me to know that not everyone in this year's graduating class felt the same way. If you go back and listen to the September 15th board meeting, which I have done multiple times, I hope the students realized they were in fact heard. While they spoke about going to one color, it was not an ultimatum, and they actually offered some other solutions which I hope they see. Recently, boys have worn red gowns and girls have worn gold gowns. However, this year, students are not required to wear the color associated with a gender. The choices this year are red and gold. I personally do not care which color a student chooses to wear as long as it is red or gold. I am more excited about celebrating this great milestone with them in May and the memories I have of each of them from when they were 5th and 6th graders at BWI. My mind will be on those things on that day, not the color of the gown they are wearing. We will continue this process in subsequent years. The junior class may feel differently, as was stated by the Girl Scouts, and when they are seniors next year, they may express a desire to go to one color. If that is the case, we will explore that option at that time. And the sophomore class may choose to go back to red and gold the year after. So just to clarify to the public, because the board was taking some heat on this issue on social media, the board did not make the final decision on this. I did. So if you want to be mad at someone, I guess that's me. But I made this decision based on the information I was provided by this year's senior class and plan to utilize the input from next year's senior class next year. And with that, that concludes my report this evening.
Thank you, Ryan. Take us to item number 9, Treasurer's Report. Darren, you got a little thing for us?
Yes, I actually have a couple of things, and I'm not sure, you're going to have to advise me on what is most appropriate. The first thing on the agenda was to discuss the monthly financial report, and you have it contained in your packet. I think that the one thing that I wanted to emphasize, which does play into the 5-year forecast, which may end up being a more substantial conversation, is that this month year-to-date versus last month year-to-date, if you look at the variance pages within this document, you will discover that we're actually $470,000 ahead of estimates, which it's a good thing. $470,000 is a lot of money to, I think, people sitting around this table and to our community. The issue, however, is that, we have a budget of several millions of dollars, and that $470,000 doesn't go a long way. And that's one of the reasons why, as we will begin our conversation about the 5-year forecast, it is looking how it looks. So, as far as the monthly reports are concerned, all the variances are within budgetary amounts. The year is progressing as we expected it to progress, as it's consistent with the budgets that were prepared last spring. But I think more to the point of our conversation this evening, we're looking into the future, and that future may be somewhat cloudy at this point. So the other things that you always want me to discuss are records requests. We had 4 new records requests come in this month. I hope to have all of those dispatched by Thanksgiving break, which is next Tuesday. We had one of those 4, quite candidly, was a request that involved literally thousands of emails, and so it's taking some time to process that along with a previous request regarding email. Those emails have been pulled. They each are in existing zip files, and honestly, we have a review process of each one of those emails to make sure that there's no information contained therein that we're required to keep confidential, or if there's any kind of personally identifiable data in those emails, that will be redacted, and then the balance will be provided. Again, I hope to get those done in the next 2 or 3 days, but you need to understand that in order for that process to move forward, even though we have software to assist us in that matter, it still requires a lot of time just to review the breadth of those requests. So for those folks that made those requests, I ask for their patience. We are working on it, and we will have those concluded shortly.
Darren, that 470,000 probably represents about 1% of the budget.
It's actually less than that, and so that is my point exactly. It's about 0.5% on a budget our size, and so yes, while to you and me, $478,000 is a big number. It would be nice to have that left over at the end of the day, but this district is just a huge operation, and so understanding that that's less than 0.5% of what we're dealing with is significant.
Can I ask a couple questions? I noticed that one of the largest variances is income tax. Is that is some of that a timing difference, that we received something in a different month than expected or earlier than expected, or is that, do you think will carry through?
Honestly, that was a big question we had going in through the first quarter. If you look at the report, you'll note that we have about half of our income tax receipts in. So the timing is what we would expect. I will also tell you that income tax receipts are ahead of last year, as you noted. And I know Jeremy and I talked about this during the transition, and we each were very hesitant to bring that up at the time because we weren't sure if it were going to carry forward. At this point in time, at least for this year, I believe that it will hold. Now, what will happen in subsequent years, I can't tell you, because as you well know, with what the economy does is anyone's guess. And so if unemployment starts to go up, our income tax receipts will probably start to come down. But right now, for this fiscal year, we believe that trend will hold.
And then one of the other big variances was in, one of the other large, by percentage, I guess, really was supplies. But I know Jeremy even months ago was preparing us for the fact that supplies would probably come in, substantially over.
Yes, and that is directly, I don't know that it's fair to say that we're buying more this year than we have in past years. What I believe to be the case is that everything that we buy is subject to the same inflationary pressure that our public buys. And some of the things that we buy are quite candidly going up at a faster rate of inflation than normal purchases. That's certainly the case with fuel and some other things that it takes to run the buses. The other thing that we're keeping a very close eye on, quite honestly, with regard to our budget this year are utility costs. And as I sit here today, I can't give you a definitive answer as to what's going on with our utility costs. Obviously, we have more square footage now that high school is online. And I don't know whether it is that our new buildings are not performing as estimates would have indicated under construction, or quite honestly, where we could have just missed the mark budgetarily, or it could be a combination of the two. As I said here today, I can't tell you. I can tell you this, that we're looking at it in our office, and we're trying to draw some conclusions based on the engineering estimates when those buildings were constructed versus just our usage rates. So I hope to have a more definitive answer to that question in the future, but right now I just can't answer it.
Thank you.
And I had a discussion with Doug, who also questioned the estimates on the utilities.
Yeah, and Doug and I had a conversation today, and our accounts payable person is pulling the bills, and we're looking at that, but we just haven't come to any conclusions yet.
Okay.
You want to do the 5-year forecast now or later?
How about next month?
I can't do that. I can't put it off that long.
No, now's fine.
Folks, if you'll go to our 5-year forecast, I just want to make a few brief comments, and then I'll certainly entertain your questions. I'm going to be working from the schedule of revenue and expenditures and changes, this document, as I move through the forecast. On page 1, you'll notice the forecast that has been prepared. Yes?
Do you have it on PowerPoint?
I don't know that I do, but I'll try. Yeah, it is.
Everybody's watching.
I know.
We're counting characters in your password.
Well, and that's the problem. Because I had to change my password today.
Do some.
I'm not really counting the characters.
Well, I don't understand why it's not working. Yeah. That's fine.
I'm so glad I'm here.
It's not liking my new password for whatever reason. Okay. Anyway, Mr. Ryan's gonna, or Mr. McLean's gonna pull it up on his machine and see what we can do. I guess the first thing I wanna talk to you about are the variables that are in the forecast that we need to be aware of. First of all, you all are experienced board members and you know this, but we in Ohio fund school districts on biennial budgets, right, every 2 years. This is the last year in the biennium. Therefore, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, we did not include any kind of increase in state aid. There are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, we don't know what the biennial budget is going to do. The new fair funding formula, while the original legislation called for a 6-year phase-in, there's no guarantee that it's even going to be there after this year. So we're not sure. And finally, within that fair funding formula, the formula itself attempts to calculate a basic aid rate for the district. Ours is just over $7,700. But we need to understand a couple of things. First of all, from our state aid, we only get about 20% of that from the state, okay? So the citizens of this community pay 80% of the bill. The other thing that to keep in mind with regard to that issue is that the figures that are being used to calculate that aid amount are from fiscal year 2018. And I think all of us around the room and around the table and in the room would say that our costs have gone up significantly since 2018. So what I'm telling you is with regard to that issue specifically, I think we're playing with a stacked deck. So please keep that in mind as we move through this.
In our favor or not in our favor?
No, it's not in our favor.
Correct. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
No.
If I stack a deck, I want it to be in my favor.
Yeah, I understand. So anyway, I'm going to move ahead, and technology is what it is, I guess. And I know the job I have, but I also am going to tell you that I'm not a techno wizard when it comes to this stuff. I'm too old. If you look at the forecast on page 1, the first thing I want to note is that in fiscal year 2025, we begin as a district to spend more than we bring in each year. So we are beginning a period of deficit spending. The other thing that you should note in 26 and 27, and this is true of any school budget I've ever been a part of, once deficit spending begins, it increases exponentially. It does not increase like 2, 4, 6. It increases like 2, 8, 16. It increases exponentially. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that this district has operated on a system that the Association of Governmental Fiscal Officers operates under, which is maintaining 60 days true cash. That's a very simple concept. It just means if we were to receive no additional aid, we would be able to operate 60 days. And so it's like having a savings account for you personally. By the time we get to 2027, that 60 days true cash will have dwindled to somewhere between 7 and 10 days. So things are going to get pretty critical by that point. The other thing that I think needs to be noted at the end of this forecast is on the very last line of the second page of the forecast, and that is the unreserved fund balance in June 30, which is $1.7 million. And that may sound like a lot, but when we have expenditures like we do, it doesn't work. It's not enough. And that is the amount of money that by law I'm allowed to use to certify contracts moving forward. And so by that point in time, we're going to be in a critical period. If you look at this graph that's on the board, and I appreciate you guys pulling that up, thank you. A couple of things are worth noting. Like I said, I talked about our state share being basically 20%. I try to make, for those of you in the room who are who like to be specific, it's 19.56. I like quick, dirty, back of the envelope math, so I call it 20%. And you'll notice that 80% of that is from local sources. Okay. House Bill 110 is the fair funding formula that I talked about that will only be here through this year. The other thing that we need to realize is this 20 mil floor figure. And that 20 mil floor is important because in 2023, this county will go through a triennial update. So if we get, which in the forecast, I will tell you, I think it's probably conservative, but the forecast has a 6.5–7% figure built in for that reappraisal. It may be 9–10% given the way property values are going in Delaware County, but as long as we're on the floor, we get a bump every 3 years on our carryover property. Now understand that our new property, that's defined as property that did not exist a year ago but has come into being this year, is new on the tax duplicate, and we get new money for new property. We get a little bump for carryover property, and that's because of House Bill 920 that was passed in the 70s. And if you're curious about that, I can talk about 920 too as well. Our enrollments, I will tell you, we've had some conversations internally with enrollment. This is enrollment as has been the case and continues to be the case. my understanding is, and I've seen the document, that in 2019, this district had an enrollment study done, and it allowed three different enrollment increase levels, I guess, is what I want to say. I will tell you that what we have seen over that time is that we are consistent with the lower portion of that. And certainly, everyone wants to talk about, on this side of Delaware County, the impact that Intel will have. On the other side of Delaware County, they're talking about the impact that Honda will have at Marysville. So honestly, none of that has been put into consideration with this forecast, simply because we don't know what that's going to look like. So, but we have included the enrollment increases that we have seen thus far, and that has been predictable, quite honestly.
When you say predictable, you mean that enrollment study has met with 150 house
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
projection?
We look at, or I shouldn't say we. I mean, one of the things we looked at is longitudinal trends, and that's what has been holding. And so that's what we built our revenue models around, and to some degree our expenditure models. I will also say that, this district has a 10-year staffing plan that's out there too. And this is not necessarily the place to talk about that, except that I want to emphasize this point. At least since I've been here in 1 or 2 months, and the period of time that I've had to work with Mr. McLean and Ms. Foreman, we are really reevaluating what that staffing plan is. And I will tell you that, everything within that staffing plan that was called for this academic year has not been hired, right? So if you look at what our budgeted amount for personnel costs for this year is, and what our actual personnel costs are, those are two very different things. And that will not show up until probably the May forecast. But I don't want people to get the idea that we are adding staff just to add staff. That's not the case. The other thing that we need to keep in mind with regard to the forecast and how it is trending from 25, 26, and 27 is this. The ESSER monies are going away. And this district, like many other districts, have used ESSER money to underwrite programs, particularly student wellness, student mental health, trauma, those kinds of things that we have heard some of our citizens comment about. Those expenditures, that staff is, we're taking it into account when we build this forecast. So that's another reason why those deficits are and becoming more prevalent. If you look at our wages and benefits in this district, we're up over 80% for wages and benefits. That's our people. Understanding that, quite honestly, if you look at our benefit expenditures from last year, this year, and next year, we were able to do some things with regard to benefit costs that have been able to actually save us some money. So if the benefit levels, expenditure levels, continue to trend as they were trending 2 years ago, this graph would look much different. And so this graph is actually, while we're getting, well, you can see, the state average was 81.15 in 21, And we're, not far off that. So that's not a bad thing. This is the graph that I was trying to describe to you as the forecast works its way through 27. You'll notice that this year, at the end of this year, we should be at our highest point, and then we begin going the other way. So what I'm telling you is based on, well, I don't mean to tell you anything. What I'm trying to describe to you is a situation whereby we need to have some very serious conversations within the next year on what to do with regard to this trend and how best to do it. We talked about our ESSER monies going away. We talked about the future of the fair funding formula is up in the air. Honestly, I'll entertain any questions you may have. But I guess the one thing that a couple things, just one on a personal note. I know that when Jeremy gave you a forecast in May, it looked much different than this. This seems to be, I get put in this position a lot, okay? Because when I went into Salina and did my first forecast, it was not at all what they were expecting either. And the fair funding formula was not kind to them. It's not being
It's not kind to us
No,
either.
it's not kind to you.
So to the extent possible, let's stop referring to it as the fair funding formula.
And nor has it been kind to a lot of districts across the state. I can tell you districts, even, I'm from Southern Ohio. Most people can tell that from the way I talk. But I know two districts down there that I'm very familiar with are dealing with the same types of issues with regard to the 5-year forecast. So that's disconcerting. And so, we need to take, as a team, we need to begin talking very candidly and openly about, what we want this district to look like moving forward, because we're going to have to make some decisions in the next year to figure that out.
And if I could jump in, just in case people are hoping with the fair funding model, I had an opportunity to sit down and speak with, I would say, a pretty high-ranking state senator, and the question was, currently the fair funding model is not fully funded at the state level, and the question was asked, will it ever be fully funded? And this person minced no words and said no, it will not be fully funded. So this is our reality as a school, as a district, that we're working within the confines of the system and the amount of money that we're going to receive, but we're never going to receive the full amount that this model attempted to accomplish. No school will.
No. And what Mr. McLean is referring to is that there was a 6-year phase-in process, because at the time the fair funding formula was passed, we couldn't the reasoning was we couldn't afford it. The other thing is, and I've mentioned this once, but I want to emphasize it, is that we're dealing with expenditure levels that were established in 2018. In the old days, and quite honestly, if you were in a district that was the inverse of what we are, if you had a district, which there are in Southern Ohio typically, districts that receive 80% of their state funding from Columbus and 20% locally, if you're in one of those districts, you always wanted to talk about increasing the state basic aid amount. For us, that doesn't make that big a difference. We would be much better suited for the legislature to deal with the expenditures of 2018, bring them up to speed, we would have a better shot at making positive progress on that than having the state aid amount increase, because we only get 20 cents on every dollar in that model. So, it's we're, at the time you all interviewed me, you asked me if I'd ever been in a district like this, and I'll be honest. I think this district is a wonderful place, and a wonderful place to have kids progress through the system. I've never been in a district where 80% of the revenue is generated locally, and that certainly is a situation that needs to be dealt with. And I don't know that we can. I'm telling you that it puts a whole different dynamic on how we operate every day.
Can I ask a couple of things just to clarify?
Yes, ma'am.
So we talked about the enrollment projections that we have. That study was done in 2019. It goes out to 28, 29. Like you said, it had 150 home trajectory or projection, 250, 350. So historically, we've bet on the 150.
That's correct.
And 150 is what's incorporated into this. Okay. So obviously that could change if there were big
Yes.
shifts in development, but we'll just kind of pay attention and see what happens there. A couple of things that I want to point out, and I think I try to point this out each time we go through this, and it kind of ties back to what you were saying as far as the amount of funds we receive from the state, and kind of what Mr. McLean was saying about what we can expect to see in the future. Several years ago, we in the state of Ohio, like the personal income tax rate was closer to 5% or so. And one of the things that the state has done is they want to decrease each individual's income tax rate. So, and I think that's going to continue into the future. So, instead of them, collecting money from residents and then handing it out to the schools, they're, letting people keep it, which means that locally we have to come up with more. There's, obviously negatives to that, in that locally we have to come up with more. But, to maybe that gives us a little bit more control over it. So, just kind of, I don't want people to think it's that any school district is doing anything wrong. It's just kind of the state of our state government and kind of where they're going and what they're doing, and we need to deal with that.
And honestly, Mrs. Dorsch, to emphasize your point, if one would look historically, what has happened to state funding, regardless of district, regardless of geographic location, there has been I don't know whether it would be conscious or unconscious, but there has been a shift toward funding districts from Columbus and pushing that responsibility back on the local taxpayer. I described a typical school district in Southern Ohio, which is 75% locally funded and 75% state funded, 25% locally funded. Early in my career, I knew of districts that were up to 90% state funded. And if you look at those districts today and pull their financials, they're down to the 75%. When I went to Bellaire in 2014 as superintendent, we were up 75% state funded district. When I left in 2021, I guess, we were down to being funded 56% at the state level. So regardless, I think your point is well taken, that regardless of what district you're in, that phenomenon has taken place. And that's a very difficult phenomenon for local taxpayers to understand and grasp. I think that phenomenon is just more pronounced in a district like Sunbury or like Big Walnut, because you already are so highly funded locally.
Well, and some of the other things that have happened more recently in the state too, the cuts in the CAUV, which, you know, is great for agricultural interests, and, you know, that's great for, you know, some of the people in this district, but that does also shift
Yes.
more responsibility to residential taxpayers.
Yes.
So just trying to make sure that, you know, people kind of remain aware that, you know, there's a lot of factors that play into this, and we control very little of that. One of the other, one of the questions I had was about CCP and whether, and I don't know if this has ever come up before, considering a different approach with CCP and the amount that our district pays for, although I don't know that that is anything more than a drop in the bucket, you know, in the budget. So that would be one question I have. Another question that I had was whether any additional building needs were incorporated into this. I know we have BWI. I don't know how that was figured into this, if reopening that was figured in, or where we're at with that.
Let me answer your first question with CCP. I'll be very honest with you. I need to look at that further. I will tell you that there is a state minimum, and negotiating with universities regarding that issue is very tense. We really don't have a lot of control over that issue. We have control over who we sign agreements with, one institution of higher ed, but the rates are not very flexible.
But even with the institutions that we might sign with, I mean, ultimately those rates are pretty well set across the state. We don't have anything.
Yeah. Your question about facilities and capital improvements. One of the things that we have been discussing internally, and one of the reasons why I think that it is very prudent for us as an organization to have conversations, is exactly what you outlined. Because currently, I will say this, 90% of capital improvements are all funneled through our permanent improvement budget. That permanent improvement budget is our permanent improvement levy plus the payments in lieu of with Tanger Mall and a couple other things, which gives us roughly $1.5 million annually to do something with. Candidly, that's not enough because while we had bond issues passed to build new facilities, if you all as a board were to take action to open the building that has been mothballed, we don't have the monies available
Temporarily. Currently.
Yeah, currently we do not have the monies to bring that building up to speed, to open it. So what I'm telling you is that's an urgent need in this district to maintain the facilities that we have. The other thing that has come up, and I'm not trying to speak out of turn, Mr. McLean can certainly speak to this as well, but one of the things that we have seen is that we really need to address some issues with regard to our school bus fleet. And for example, Mr. Wagner presented us with a plan that basically at a minimum, he needs 4 new school buses a year. That is to upgrade to a minimum extent the current fleet and to take care of any growth that we may have moving forward. Well, a school bus, in roughly speaking, is $100,000. So that's $400,000 a year that's not budgeted. And if you multiply that by 5, for a 5-year forecast, it's $2 million. So if we were to move forward with purchasing 4 new school buses every year for the next 5 years, then you need to then you need to subtract $5 million from the bottom line. And since the bottom line in 2027 is 1.7, it's going to accelerate any kind of it's either going to accelerate the deficit that we're looking at in this forecast, or it's going to accelerate the levy cycle that we're looking at. So in answer to your last question, your second question, no, there's not been, because the 5-year forecast is modeled on general fund expenditures, and the PI budget is not out of the general fund; it's out of the PI
Right, but
fund.
as far as operating costs.
Operating costs are there. If you're talking about utilities, turning the lights on, all that kind of stuff, yes, that's there. That is there. As I said, moving forward, we'll have a better idea of what those equate to with the additional square footage of the high school, the new elementary, and even the new athletic facilities, because some of those are all metered on 1 meter. So it's difficult to pull them out, some depending on the utility, some are not.
So remind us of the timeline of placing a levy on the ballot, an actual election, and then collection time.
Well, we would have to do something no later than 90 days prior to an election, and understanding that everything works in 6 months or a year to the rears. So the first year of collection on any levy would be, would depend. Yeah, if it was a levy, even if it were increasing the income tax, it's not going to be the full rate of collection. So it's going to be about half to 3/4, depending on when it comes on. And then, that's why I have said we need to be having some serious conversations and look at something or some measures or a combination of the two in 25 and no later than 26, but 25 would be my recommendation.
To be in place by 25?
Well, I would say no later than be on the ballot in 25. First in
Even though revenue starts to
it depends.
You're,
I mean, yes. I guess you all need to figure out how far down the road you want to go. Okay, if you want to maintain your 60-day carryover, then certainly that moves the timeline up. If you don't mind going under that 60-day carryover and trying to work to get it back, then that gives us a different timeline. So I'm not trying to avoid questions. I'm just trying to, I think it's important for us all to operationally define what it is we want to do. Mm-hmm. If you want to maintain 60 days, okay, then that's one course of action. If you don't mind going down to 30 days and trying to recover, then that's another course of action. So I think it's developing and reaching consensus on what we want to do as a district moving forward, so that we can speak with one voice and when or if we are on the ballot, then we have a very clear message to give to the voters. Now, and I'm not trying to make the system or this conversation any more cloudy, but Mr. McLean and I were both in a session at the Ohio School Board's Capital Conference on Monday.
New laws and regulations relative to levies.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so the key to anything that we do is going to be having a very strong and active levy committee, because between the two of us, we're very limited on what we can do legally. I mean, and
It's not even limited. It's illegal for us
Cannot.
to
Yeah,
participate in the levy committee now.
yeah, and I was trying to be nice. You know,
I cut to the chase.
yeah. So, and honestly, there's been cases in Ohio where school officials have been held criminally liable for doing more than they were supposed to do. And so, you know, I certainly don't want to put my license on the line for that. And so, yeah, it's you know, there are so many crucial decisions and crucial conversations that need to take place sooner than later, so that we have a very clear direction to move toward.
First off, the 60-day carryover has been our aspiration. I think by board policy, though, our board policy is actually that we have a 30-day minimum on-hand carryover. So one of them is, I appreciate what you're saying in the conversation about whether we want to maintain the 60 or dip below that. At the end of the day, the one thing I would say is our policy dictates that we maintain at least 30. And at the end of your projection here, we don't see that.
Oh, no. I mean, I would have to go back and look. That graph is in your packet, but at what point it is that we drop below 30? It may be
26.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It would be, my guess would have been 26.
It happens precipitously. I have a few questions, but I'm trying to make space for others because I'm sure others do as well. Okay, maybe not. So first off, I think, and this, I'm kind of joking with you, but I appreciate two things. One, you taking the time earlier this week to walk me through this. And two, the fresh set of eyes on the conversation, like, you know, the per pupil enrollment as an example, and that it is actually trending with what we've seen at the lower level, but it is in fact trending at what we see. In all seriousness, since my time on the board, I've really tried not to use the fair funding formula as language coming out. It really is House Bill 1. I recognize that dates back to like 1920 when it was introduced, and it was finally passed in last summer, 2021. The two questions, and I'll cut straight to it. You referenced revenue and expenditures, obviously. 25 to 27, we have a negative impact. But I think that one of the things that you said is there might be hope here, and I just want to make sure that I'm connecting some dots for myself. That is relative to next fiscal year, the triennial budget. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. So what's built into the forecast is a 6% increase. Everyone in this room, I think, understands
inflation somewhere around 9 to 14.
Yes.
Right.
But property values in Delaware County are going up at a much faster rate. So the advantage of being on the 20 mil floor, and the one thing that we do not want to screw up is being on that 20 mil floor.
Right.
Allows us some inflationary growth. Okay, so yes, the potential is certainly there based on what's happening currently for there to be inflationary growth beyond what is built into the forecast. So that's I guess that's the silver lining in the rain cloud. Whether or not that increase is enough,
right,
is a different matter, because if you look through the forecast, you will see that we're modeling increased revenues. It's not that we're thinking that we're going to get less money or even the same money. We are modeling increased revenues. The problem is that our expenditures are not keeping pace with the revenues that we're modeling.
I think the other thing in terms of the expenditures now, there has been a lot of work done. I heard you say, you and Mr. McLean, and I believe that, as well as Mrs. Foreman, there's been a lot of work done by the previous administration, by this board and others, not to necessarily fill positions as available, not to have a 10-year forecast potentially, but to utilize that as student need is actually there versus, it's on paper. So there has been work on trying to tighten that expenditure side of the house. What you're saying right now is without the knowledge of what that triennial budget comes in like next fiscal year, we are in this situation now.
Yes.
The other thing that I would say is I have been a member of districts in the past where, at year 4 and 5, you're already showing negative.
Yeah.
So while that isn't great comfort right now in terms of our financial status, there is still, your terminology, not mine, is silver lining to the rain cloud of we're still at least positive even with what we're trending and showing right now. Not to our board policy level, not to where we need to be, but through those actions of yourself and previous employees, we have been able to show at least right now revenue at the end of that 5 years.
Yes, and Mr. Fuji, I appreciate the kind words, but I haven't been here long enough to do anything, or I haven't been here long enough to screw anything up.
Amen. Amen. My only point with that is there has been a steady effort at this.
Yes. Yes.
Knowing again that House Bill 1, remember I'm not using the other term,
Yeah.
House Bill 1 wasn't kind to us, and where other districts surrounding us get in the neighborhood of $54 million and things like that, we get in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year,
Right.
based on House Bill 1.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pointing out that at the end of this, we are positive. At the end of this, we are positive, but it's about a week's worth
Yes.
of positive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, certainly, if I'm portraying a overly gloomy outlook and that we need to start pressing the panic button, I don't mean to. But I do mean to suggest that we need to have some very candid conversations around what we want this to look like moving forward, because I don't believe that it's prudent just to kick the can down the road and get to 2027 and have a week's carryover. I don't think that's prudent. And so
Our
I think,
employees, thank you for that.
well, I mean, Mr. Fuji, you know this. At one time in my career, I went through a district that was in fiscal emergency. And the local board lost control of that district. I never want to go through that again. Okay, so while that I've been accused that single episode drives me to be more conservative than I should be, I'll take that.
I was gonna say, it's one of the things that we're going to appreciate about
Well,
you doing
I take that hit. I mean, that's okay. I don't want to. You all, as a board, don't want to lose control of this district.
Correct.
The community doesn't want you to lose control of this district, and I don't want to go through that again at all. So, getting back to my point is that we're moving into a situation where we're going to have some frank, candid conversations, check everybody's ego at the door, and figure out what we want this district to look like moving forward.
Correct. The only other 2 points that I had on this, and then I'll be done with my questions. One is you referenced the school bus fleet. We've actually tried to do some work during my brief stint on this board to reduce the average age of our fleet. I think when I came on, it was somewhere around 14 years average age of the bus. I think now it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 11. You can fact check me on that, but I that's my recollection of the last purchase. And then the final one is, even as these steps have been taken, the reality is, I'm going to come back to the 7 to 10 days. I think that's an important one to kind of keep in the back of our mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Darren, I heard you say that that's got to 6% for the triennial.
Yeah.
Just an FYI, the last triennial was 13 to 14.
And
it's good to keep it low.
No, and I understand, and that's the point I was making. Okay,
Right.
I understand that figure in and of itself may be very conservative, too conservative, and I certainly recognize that the next update could very well be 15%, but I also don't know that it will remain to be seen how much that will certainly help, but how much we'll have to take a look at.
Right. One of the other points you made is possibly looking at raising the income tax. I get very nervous at 20% of our revenue right now coming from income tax.
Right.
Because when you go into a downturn, we don't control that.
I understand.
Real estate tax never goes down with the economy. It stays the same.
Right. And one of the reasons why I brought that up as an option, just so that everyone is clear, there are a few things that will not affect us being on the 20 mil floor. Income tax is one, a new or increased permanent improvement levy is the other, and the third is an emergency operating. If it's an emergency operating, it will not affect our 20 mil floor. So, like I said, that's one thing that we need to be very cognizant of. And because what will happen is if we were to propose and honestly pass a regular operating levy, it may bring us off the 20 mil floor. And if you passed a five mil levy and we took us off the floor, we may only get credit for 2.5 mils, and we wouldn't have enough revenue, and certainly wouldn't have the revenue that we
Right.
promised everybody. So I don't want to get into that situation.
Right. The one other topic, although the enrollment's based on the 150 homes, the previous 10-year staffing forecast was based on 250.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's where you're making some of the adjustments in staffing.
Yes.
That's all I had on it. Alice, you got any questions?
No question.
Angela? So when do you want to have a work session? After the first of the year.
Yeah, I was going to say, give me some time to breathe, and honestly, then we need to have a work session and have the ability to, I'll use this term, operationally define what it is you want to look at, and try to have a good conversation about that. As I indicated, it needs to be frank, open, and honest, and everybody needs to check their egos at the door and be ready to work.
To that end, I think the honest answer is at a minimum, we start with the fact that our policy says 30 days.
Yeah.
On that topic, I think one of the decisions that's going to have to be made before those talks is what we're going to do with Boffman Street.
Correct.
Funny how I led into that, huh?
Good segue.
Previously, it was scheduled to be an elementary school. I think it's going to be more cost effective. Going to be pretty expensive to change all the bathrooms. That building was built for bigger adults. I kind of had presented 4 years ago to a different board president that building's use, or a vision for that building's use, would be, for lack of a better word, an academy, similar to what Old Tangy's doing, with different programming, more hands-on programming. So be ready next month to have a discussion on that, maybe. Whether we want to, if anybody's got any brainier ideas than that, speak up.
Was it relative? Is it relative right now to the 5-year forecast, or are you saying be prepared for?
It's relative to the 5-year forecast, because the decision on that building is going to be determinant of when and what levies we're going to put on.
And what you're also saying is it's not captured currently in what Mr. Jenkins has provided as a 5-year forecast, that all of the silver lining rain clouds that he's kind of shared, and I'm saying that humorously, is still irrespective of what it means to bring that building back up to code as our current.
Your
one.
5-year does not reflect.
That's correct. In order to have, I think, an informed conversation about revenue needed moving forward in this district, we need to have a very clear picture on what that facility will look like, so we know, or have an idea of the resources that we need to put into it. The other thing, quite honestly, is that we need to have a very clear conversation, I think, around what your vision as a board and what the community's vision is as far as safety and student wellness and supports, because remember I said that the ESSER money is going to go away, and those positions or those services that are funded through ESSER will go back into the general fund. And some of those, some of our trauma-informed care stuff, our counseling services, those things that we purchase through ESC contracts will end up coming back here. Or if we no longer want to support those services, then we need to, at the appropriate time, take measures to call those services at an end. But whatever, whether, and I'm talking about just fundamental stuff like, putting that tactical film on the windows. If we're going to harden and increase building security, I'm not talking about the policy that we've been talking about. I'm just talking about nuts and bolts stuff, so that we have a clear understanding and we can put pencil to paper and come up with a realistic cost estimate. Because I don't think this board necessarily wants to run more than one levy campaign, and so in order to have an informed amount that we're talking about for needs, I think those things need to be considered. Absolutely. So to your point, Mr. Crowell, yes, I think we need to have a candid conversation among the board and reach some kind of conclusion on what to do with that facility.
And those possibilities are not captured in the 5-year forecast. So if we open that
Yes.
as an academy, the items that we would need to place in those programming, there's a cost associated with that. That building, we moved out of there for a reason. So
Right.
we've more than $1.2 million in repairs and upgrades needed to that building. So I think that's the discussion. And what Mr. Jenkins was describing earlier, that, while we may be able to wait until 25 or 26 with a levy ask, that's kind of status quo. We're not doing anything. We're not fixing everything that needs fixed. We're not purchasing the buses that we need. If we're going to do those things, we need, as a board, to decide what our vision is. We need to, as a community, gain their insight of what they want for their kids, because there is going to be a cost associated with that.
Well, and one other topic on that exact point. When you say 25, one other topic on that exact point. When you say 25 or 26, you're talking about an assumption of a first-time passage.
Correct, yeah.
Historically, that is not how. There was a community member and board member that said we tax ourselves responsibly. I believe that. I really do. But I also know that it takes some time to build the coalition to be able to be successful. So when we say things like, at the latest for the collection point to have something on there, that assumes a first-time passage.
And our admin team is working very hard to watch our spending and to be conservative. And I think Mark and Angie tried to do the same. So it's not like we are setting this community up to back up the Brinks truck so we can go on a spending spree. We're going to continue to make decisions and be as fiscally responsible as we can, while at the same time providing the best education for our kids, the best working environment that we can for our employees. But at the end of the day, we're going to continue making those decisions within the checkbook that we have available to us.
I think we're moving a little bit past the conversation of the 5-year forecast into some action items.
It's all encompassing, but yeah. That will take us to item 10, select the board policies. No action is anticipated pending further study. I will give an update that the policy ad hoc committee had several meetings last week, and we're compiling the data from those.
Is there any kind of update that you can provide in terms of some of the feedback that you've heard?
No, it's massive.
Okay, so any, like a number of
I mean, that's
surveys and things?
That's a survey online. Survey online will stay in place into December. We're anticipating having the Neola meeting at the end of the month, and there'll be some information coming out of that.
I'd like to be able to express my appreciation to both you and Mrs. Graziosi for the work you did on engaging the community at the various town hall events. I know it's been a charged issue and something that people have felt very passionately about, so I want to say thank you to you both for that. I also did want to share something. I know we're not taking any action on it, but I think there's been some confusion around this topic. I believe there's been some confusion relative to the policies and the law. I want to make sure, at least as I've received some questions from staff, that the board policy that's been discussed has been in the conversation of weapons, but that there is an actual law, Ohio Revised Code 3319.41. And for my board colleagues, I'll share that here momentarily. But the law reads specifically in paragraph C that persons employed or engaged as teachers, principals, or administrators in school, whether public or private, and non-licensed employees and bus drivers may, within the scope of their employment, use and apply such amount of force and restraint as is reasonable and necessary to quell a disturbance threatening physical injury to others, to obtain possession of weapons or other dangerous objects upon the person or within the control of a pupil, or for the purposes of, here it is, for the purposes of self-defense and protection of persons or property. So the types of questions that have come to me that I've tried to research have been, hey, so is it true that without this we can't defend ourselves? I think it's really important that our staff hear that's not the case. There's law that speaks to this, and that law says that our opportunity to defend ourselves, our students, and our property is there. It is real. We need not necessarily pass this specific policy to ensure that happens. I just wanted to make sure that I took a moment to share that, because I have had several folks kind of reach out to me in confusion of that. It doesn't have anything to do necessarily with the policies. They were asking clarifying questions, and I wanted to be able to kind of address that. Like I said,
No, that's fine. What was the ORC on that?
I'll send it to everybody. It is ORC 3319.41.
Can I make a quick comment just about the preschool program? I didn't know because they're kind of hanging out here. I know we had some adjustments that I think we needed to make to that policy, so I don't know if that will be pulled out of this set, if something needs to change on that, or if we need to talk about whether that needs to be changed, or if it's just going to hang out as is for the time being.
My plan wasn't to make any changes until we sat down with Janice from Neola, because I don't want to do something and have her correct it and we do it again.
Thank you.
Item 11, board members' items of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Fuji, for bringing up the ORC code. That's a very good clarification. I also want to thank all the community, the staff, and students who participated in the forum this week. I want to assure our staff, students, and parents, and our community members, thank you for your input. I have been, and I will continue to keep reading these emails and surveys. I want to assure you, our goal is to keep our students and staff and all those that are on the BWLS properties safe and protected. We will continue to research all resources available before any vote or decision is to be made. With that being said, it is my hope the board will consider an external safety audit of the entire district and properties. I feel this would be vital for updating our school safety protocols. Also, speaking to Darren, when we were talking about the budget, I think this would be an important role or important thing to do sooner than later. Also, we've had many changes over the last few years with new buildings, administration, board members, and staff. I hope that we could get this on our business items and discuss this very soon. On a lighter note, I'd like to thank all our winter staff, sport coaches, and volunteers. I feel this might be the most important season for our children's mental health. Let's face it, we all live in Ohio. Fall and spring are glorious, but the skies can be gray and last a long time here. So getting out and getting physical activity is crucial after a long day at school. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Truly, this is a labor of love, as my husband used to coach high school hockey. So I know what it takes. It's not easy. It takes a lot of preparation, and it's like I said, a labor of love. I also want to commend Anthony Glass, also known as Coach Glass, our weightlifting coach. I've heard great things about your style and your interest and organization with the students in their workouts. Truly, I've heard it from several, from softball players that are in there doing off-season workouts. It's been great. And also reaching out and understanding what level of effort and dedication our student athletes are at. I know not every sport may be your passion, but cross-training, keeping healthy, and having fun with physical activities can last a lifetime. So thank you to Coach Glass. And that's it.
Steve, do you mind holding on for a minute? Sure. We're going to have to change this seating arrangement because I always forget our student board member. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, over the past week, the high school hosted a Veterans Day
Is your mic on?
assembly. Yes. Last Wednesday, the high school hosted a Veterans Day assembly, and each class got to hear from 2 to 3 veterans each, and we invited them to enjoy some pastries with us. And I personally got to talk to a number of veterans, and so it was really nice to hear their stories and learn about their experiences. And we really just appreciate them taking the time to come to our school and visiting with them. The Global Scholars had their first 2 field trips of the year, and they are very eager to go to their next field trips as well. Career conversations are starting up again during Eagle Times. This is a time in which professionals in various fields come in to talk to students about their jobs and their professions. This is really beneficial to students because it helps them get insight as to what they would like to do in the future after high school. Tomorrow, the counselors are hosting another college application day for the senior class, and this was very beneficial for myself, and I hope many other students could receive help during this time as well. The sophomores will be taking a field trip to tour DACC on November 22nd. This is a really great opportunity, as these sophomores can also have the opportunity to take classes there, and that would coincide with their education at the high school. The pre-ACT will be held on December 8th, and good luck to those taking the test. As for athletics, the football team unfortunately lost to Massillon last Friday, and the score was 42-21. It's been a pleasure to watch, cheer on, and just support the team throughout the past 6 years, so it was great to be there for them, and I congratulate them on their successes this year. The seniors participating in a sport in college had their college signing. Congratulations to them on their commitment to further their athletic careers in college. Winter sports are also beginning as well, which is very exciting. This weekend, specifically on Saturday, the bowling team will be competing at their state kickoff classic at noon. And additionally, the game day competition cheer team will be competing this Sunday at Olentangy Berlin at their first competition. The girls basketball team will have their first game on Tuesday, November 29th, home against Canal Winchester. And on Friday, December 2nd, the boys varsity basketball team will have their first game home versus Delaware Hayes. Also throughout late November and early December, indoor track, the swim and dive teams, boys and girls wrestling, varsity gymnastics, will all have their first matches and meets of the seasons, and I just wish them the best of luck during this time, and I hope they have a very successful season. The Spirit Shop had its grand opening on November 3rd. This is a student-led and organized business in our school, and it's amazing to see this happening at our school. The school store is open during lunchtimes and features t-shirt designs and sweatshirts and different products organized and designed by students. Additionally, another student-led business, the Big Walnut Print and Design business, will have special products featured in the Spirit Shop, and this will go in after Thanksgiving. So students will be able to browse those products and hopefully potentially find a holiday gift for loved ones there. As for Student Council, on Tuesday we assembled and delivered 150 meals for the Hope House in Columbus. This organization provides meals and different necessities to women and children in need locally in Columbus. We've also been hosting a canned food drive for the whole entire school, and that will end tomorrow. It's been very successful, and all of these items will be delivered tomorrow to Big Walnut friends who share after school. We have currently received around $603 worth of food, and we are glad it's going to a good cause in a local organization. We expect to receive more cans tomorrow as well, so we'd like to thank everyone who has helped us in that effort. We will be having another Inspire Day on December 7th. I know Grant touched base on this earlier in the meeting. This is essentially a special school day, which we have 2 additional periods built into the schedule. And during these 2 periods, students can select 2 classrooms to go to, and the teachers in these classrooms will have different learning opportunities, whether it's reading books or like Grant mentioned, learning how to cook a steak. There's various different topics that they can learn from, and I'm very excited to participate in this year, and we're very happy to be able to organize this day for our student body. We have more special plans for that day as well that we're hoping to get in action. The Spanish Club organized many boxes for Operation Christmas Child, and those gifts will be sent to many children across the world for Christmas time. The Leo Club is about to host a winter coat drive as the weather's getting colder. They will also be selling Christmas trees on the square during the holiday season, which is exciting. And then Model UN had their first meeting. I hope everyone has a safe and fun Thanksgiving with their loved ones, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Certainly sounds like students are busy.
Yes.
A few things from my perspective, Mr. President. First of all, Mr. Jenkins mentioned the Ohio School Board Association. He talked about maybe attending a session with Mr. McLean and all. He didn't mention the 2 that we were in together. Thanks a lot, man. The ones I attended: sidestepping landmines, legal and practical advice to boards. Fascinating. Community engagement through strategic plans, essential policies, updates for 2023. Here's one that Mr. Jenkins and I were in together: the Great Resignation and its financial impact on schools. I also wanted to share that in the activity fair, the Ohio School Resource Officer Association was there. So knowing that you all have been kind of engaging in these conversations, I did bring back some materials for us as a board, and wanted to just be able to state that. Overall, it was a great experience. I know some of our administrators were down there as well. I had the pleasure to attend, and I'm appreciative. Second thing is, yesterday was Educator Support Professionals Day. I had a chance to visit General Rosecrans Elementary at a time where they were having a luncheon in recognition for some of their parapros and school education support professionals. Certainly from my seat, I want to be able to say thank you to them as well, just as we have with administrators and we will do with educators and so on. But ESP Day was yesterday, November 16th. And for any members of the audience who know an educational support professional, please reach out to them and express gratitude at this time of, as Ms. Ernst said, Thanksgiving. Mr. President, this one might be just a little bit more practical for us. Not really an announcement necessarily, but I'd request that going into December, I know we have some work session topics to discuss and those types of things, but maybe also poll members about the meeting cadence for next year. We really need to have this conversation, to be honest with this board. My position on that hasn't changed necessarily since January of this year, I would continue to advocate for 12 meetings, one per month, as that seems to me to be efficient and effective as we take time from our administrators and our treasurer doing their work. We had 18, to your point, scheduled this year. You were 100% right, man. 18 was not the number. It wound up actually being 26 if you count through, and that's assuming that we don't have another meeting between now and our next scheduled meeting in December. But we had 26 meetings this year. In addition to that, you chartered 6 ad hoc committees. I actually want to commend that. I think that's been in a very efficient way of getting some work done. For instance, we hired a superintendent using one of those ad hoc committees. We hired an interim treasurer in this moment. That committee cannot be sunset yet, as we have to move forward and determine what our treasurer long-term solution is. Probably should have given us some better forecast data.
I appreciate the fact that this was not the way to win friends and influence people by giving you a forecast that looked like this.
I read a book once by a guy by the name of David Goggins. He's the first Navy SEAL, U.S. Army Ranger, and Green Beret. Has actually completed all of those trainings. And he used to talk about the truth mirror. I think what maybe some of this was a little bit of the truth mirror activity. But anyway, back to my point, we should schedule 12 meetings and 12 meetings only. We've gotten good at having emergency meetings and ad hocs. That would be my recommendation. Again, as you poll the members. My final my final topic has to do with our professional staff. I mentioned earlier our education support professionals. I think when we came out of executive session last month, I went on a little bit of a spiel that I'd like to kind of formalize a bit more, sharing with our community that we are a safe district. I mean, if there's been confusion in this work, we are a safe district, and largely that is because we have exceptional professionals in this district who work with our students and strive to educate our children. Our professionals are vigilant and caring. That's why I thought it was important to underscore any confusion that they might have. But because this is such an important topic, as we talk about being a warm and welcoming school environment for our students and our community, I want to take us back a little bit. Mr. President, you remember back in June of 2021 when you and I made a motion from the floor in reference to forecasting some of these potential deficits as we went forward. We asked to consider a potential levy ask at that time in June of 2021. That motion in that moment failed, as our previous treasurer had shared with us. An ask at that time would have saved our community about 1.9 mils in that moment to make the ask at that time. Today we find ourselves in a situation where, based on what Mr. Jenkins has shared, I can see that number being much larger than even that original ask back in June of 2021 when you and I made that motion. So to that end, Mr. Jenkins, when we have a work session coming up, I'd like for you to consider 3 things. The first one is, as people have reached out to me, what would it look like for us to fully fund a school resource officer program in this district? Let me define that for you. I mean 1 at every building. So that's number 1. Number 2, to your point earlier, what would it mean for us to harden our facilities to include our school buses? And the third one circles back to the initial topic that I was discussing here, which is our professional staff. What would it look like for us to fund our professional staff as the world-class professionals that they are? And I mean that for both our certified and our classified staff. We have not been immune from the activities of Columbus in this district. We've not been immune, nor have our employees been immune from kinds of this inflation and these other types of conversations that we've had at a school district level. That's hitting them personally as well. What would that look like? I recognize that's going to be large, and we're not going to do that, but I'd like to have an understanding of what that number might be to make us financially responsible stewards of taxpayer money.
Point of clarification.
Sir?
When you talk about coming up with a funding formula to support our employees as world-class professionals, are you talking about compensation package in line with Delaware County, in line with, can you give me some operational definitions, please?
And thank you for that clarification. I do appreciate it. I really do think in terms of this county,
Okay.
where is it that we really are? Where is it that we maybe aspire to be? And is there something in the middle that we can get there? Our employees have done, it's a public meeting, I get it. Our employees have done a hell of a job. And I know that we've been with our back against the wall at different points. And certainly, I don't know that from a financial standpoint, everybody has felt like we feel like they've done a hell of a job. So what might that look like? Again, I recognize there's also a responsible component to this, but I mean relative to our county.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you for that. That's all, Mr. President.
Yeah, I just want to take a couple minutes to recognize some of the conversations that we've been having in this community over the last couple of weeks. I totally get that how this conversation all came about wasn't necessarily ideal, but I do think that this does represent healthy debate, healthy discussions, ones in which participants are able to speak about the issues freely, understand them fully, and consider them honestly are vital to reaching educated solutions and to securing support for decisions. So thank you, like Steve said, thank you to Angie and Doug, to both of you for taking a lot of time to, put these forums together to talk with staff and with community members and for seeking feedback. I think that's really important. One thing that did kind of disturb me, though, was hearing the terms hate and personal attack used in reference to some of the debate that's been happening. And I don't think that this last week, like hearing this has been the first time that I've heard these terms thrown around. I feel like I notice it a lot whenever there's difficult conversations. And I just kind of want to push back on this idea that healthy debate of difficult topics and holding people accountable for their words and actions is hate or represents attacks. I know, like, I've had a lot of conversations with my kids. They'll have stories from school or something and say somebody was bullying me, or even at home, tell the other one to stop bullying me. And I always kind of hold up a finger and say, hang on a minute, let's not use those terms loosely. Someone saying something rude to you doesn't necessarily constitute bullying. And of course, my kids roll their eyes at me. I'm totally that mom. But to me, terms like bullying, hate, and attack are serious terms that carry a lot of weight. And I think that they need to be used judiciously. And it kind of occurred to me, like thinking through that this last few days, that maybe some of the division that we've talked about, like happening in our country and here in our own community, is a result of just kind of our society's inability to ask hard questions, to be and to hold others accountable, to work to build consensus and to collaborate and compromise. And maybe claiming that these debates are hate or attacks or are bullying helps kind of support a story of crime or chaos, to make people fearful or to take extreme measures. But I really want to encourage people to keep having difficult conversations. They're really important. Healthy debate is critical to making all of the decisions that we're faced with. And I think we should try to fight against the urge to let our beliefs become our identity. Let's just work to be truth seekers. Let's try to get to the answers so that we can make good decisions. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Well, everybody has said pretty much what I had written down, but I'm going with it anyway. The fall sports, congratulations to all the athletes, and especially to our Big Walnut Eagles football team for a great season. And I also want to thank the Big Walnut staff for the work that they have been doing for our students. And I want to say that I'm very thankful for their work and wish them a blessed Thanksgiving. Thanks for the Policy Ad Hoc Committee, Angie and Doug. I know that you've spent many hours working together on these policies for what we need to do. It's our responsibility to see that they are updated and in place, and all the time and work that you put into it is very much appreciated. Change is always challenging, much like Sherry was talking about. And with this happening in our world today, it becomes necessary to respond to change in a responsible manner and to keep all protected to the best of our ability. Thank you to all who were able to attend the forums and share your ideas and concerns. This information is important to me as well as the entire board and will certainly be considered. And thank you, Mr. McLean, for all my calls and all my texts and the information that you've provided for me. That's it. Oh, and also for Ms. Foreman. I've had a lot of communication with her as well.
And I'll pass tonight to speed the meeting up. That'll take us to item 12, public participation. This is a meeting of the, pardon? It's a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting school district's business and is not considered a public community meeting. This is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Please reference the criteria for public participation, which is not attached to the agenda. Did we make copies or do I need to read it?
Yeah, and I believe it was attached to some of the agendas.
Oh, okay.
You might have gotten the
Just
top
not the one
copy.
I got?
Yeah.
All right. Darren, do we have any?
We do. Our first guest this evening is Lana Lee, and she's going to wants to discuss policy 1617.
May I inquire how many we do have?
3.
Okay.
Good evening. I wanted to share my comments that I shared at Saturday's meeting, just to make sure that the entire board heard my thoughts. It is a very poorly written policy. That is the comment Mr. Crowell made at this past Thursday's meeting of the Big Walnut Board of Education regarding policy 1617, which would allow teachers and staff to carry weapons within Big Walnut schools. And yet, as the ad hoc policy committee, Mr. Crowell and Mrs. Graziosi still chose to bring this policy option to the full Board of Education for a first reading. Boards of Education regularly receive policy updates from Neola. These updates often give boards options, and in the case of policy 1617, Big Walnut has a choice. And Mr. Fuji discussed some of those other options this evening. Mr. McLean shared that of the 29 schools our Neola representative works with, Big Walnut is the only district that chose to include the option to give authorization for staff members to carry weapons. Mr. Crowell said that there is a misconception that this policy allows the Board of Education to arm teachers. Approval of 1617 is the first step if the board plans to do so. It is absolutely disingenuous to say that this policy does not give the board authority to arm teachers. Once approved, staff may receive written authorization from the board to carry weapons onto school property. Yes, there are some training requirements, an initial training of only 24 hours. I guess this minimum required training is fine with Mr. Crowell, who said, "I don't perceive the issue of guns in school to be that negative." Mr. Crowell also insinuated that the current board wasn't really considering arming teachers. If that is truly the case, it seems that the district should follow the advice Mr. McLean received from Neola. You should not have a policy that doesn't reflect what you are planning to do. Policy should follow your practice. By choosing this option in policy 1617, it is only logical to think that this board plans to provide staff with weapons. Policy 1617 came about after the passage of House Bill 99. The Ohio Fraternal Order of Police testified against the bill, stating that the training standards were inadequate to prepare school staff. Yes, Big Walnut is the only school out of 29 in this area considering the option to allow the board to authorize those who are not trained law enforcement officers to carry weapons in our schools. Mr. Crowell said he believes this makes Big Walnut unique. I believe adopting this policy actually makes our Big Walnut teachers, students, and staff guinea pigs for poorly written policy, and I implore this Board of Education to reject this policy and focus on valid research and guidance from law enforcement professionals to keep our schools safe. Thank you.
Next, we have Rachel Snyder.
Good evening. Just wanted to say 3 thank yous this evening. First, a big thank you for the new titles for the Breakfast with Parents. This engagement is important for all involved, especially in supporting our students, and not every family is set up the same for many different reasons. As a single mom whose grandparents filled in when I was not able to attend while I was doing my student teaching, I especially appreciate the schools bringing, or the district, I'm not sure which level this was done on, but I still appreciate bringing more inclusiveness to this fun event. Second, sorry, my phone's going off. Second, thank you for having the community forum last week. This can be a divisive topic about the weapons, but I thought the forum overall went fairly smoothly, and I can only hope that the input given on all sides will be used to research the best way to potentially utilize or discard the new weapons policy for our district. As more questions or ideas arise in moving forward, please be open to taking in and including staff and community law enforcement feedback on this important decision. I look forward to more difficult discussions if needed. Lastly, a big thank you to Mr. McLean for recognizing the thoughtfulness and intent of Girl Scout Troop 1374, of whom my daughter is a member, and I know the other leaders, I've been getting messages, we're thankful as well, in regards to the cap and gown policy. I'm thankful the issue was addressed at the board level and then taken to the school level. This shows that our students are being heard. I appreciate the respectful response of having their concerns addressed and not just dismissed. Students receiving their diplomas is the most important thing, but it is nice that our diverse population of students now have a choice of what color that may reflect them best. 1998 was black and red. So each generation is going to be a little different, or each group. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Ken Gary, and Ken, if I mispronounce it, I apologize.
That's right. Good evening. I just wanted to thank everyone, the board members, for putting on the program last Saturday. I thought it was a good debate, good conversation. Also, thank you to Mr. McLean and Ms. Graciosi. I kind of led them down astray, and they showed me the new high school, which is amazing. And they did that afterwards, so that was very kind of them to do. I guess the only thing I wanted to speak about is I stayed for I was probably the last one that walked out of that door, and I think the public, for the most part, spoke pretty clearly about what we would like, and those are professionals. So taking care of our children and protecting our children. I think 24 hours is pretty short-lived to train someone. I think a barista has 2 weeks of training. So I think the support from the community was overwhelmingly positive for having professionals take care of our children. And I think it's in every school. It needs to be in every school. Again, I want to thank you guys. I know these are tough conversations to have. And I hope you listen to what was said on Saturday, because I heard it and it was pretty clear. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
That'll take us to item 13, business items. It is recommended the board approve the November 2022 5-year forecast.
So moved.
Second.
Darren, when you're ready.
Yep. Mr. Kroll,
Yes?
Mrs. Dorsch. Yes. Mr. Fuji.
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
13.2, it is recommended the board approve the attached new student activity account fund number 200-9290.
So moved.
Second.
When ready, Darren?
Mr. Crowe,
Yes?
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
13.3, it is recommended the board approve the following Big Walnut High School course additions or modifications beginning with the 2023-2024 school year. Additions: ASL, which is an added position, marketing, application, psychology 2, and modifications would be to the honors STEM.
So moved.
Second.
And I want to clarify that you are not voting on the adding the position. This is the first step in making sure you are included on the curriculum that is in classes that are taking place as we make adjustments and make additions. So the intent is to add American Sign Language at the high school level, which would require the additional staff member. Marketing application would be a new course, but would not require additional staff. It would be taught by an existing teacher at the high school who has room in their schedule. Same with psychology 2, and honor STEM would be a modification from the way it is current. So before you would approve any curriculum, we wanted to make sure that you were on board with us going forward. So if you would vote to approve this, the next step before any of this would be implemented would be voting to add the person as well as the curriculum that would be used in those classes, just to clarify.
I have a question. On the ASL class, would that teacher have to have a 4-year degree, or could it be someone who's certified in the ASL?
I'm going to have Ms. Foreman jump in here and tag team the next several items.
Yeah, they would have to have a teaching certificate licensed by the state of Ohio from ODE.
Additional question, and really what you're asking for is the permission to go ahead and allow students to choose these courses. Filling it would be based on student request.
Correct, because we're getting to the point where I believe high school schedule requests start
February.
Yeah, January, February. So again, if there's no interest, if no one signs up for American Sign Language, then we wouldn't proceed. But I don't think that would be the case, just because the high school administration and guidance department, they've already done some
surveys and focus groups.
Questioning interest, and that seems to be something that there is an interest, not just here at Big Walnut, other school districts offer that, so that's not surprising.
I bring this up right now, and I know that we had a conversation about this being the curriculum and not the people yet, but I also think it's important for us to consider that we kind of hit this at the beginning or at the end of last school year, where there was a lot of interest in specific courses and things like that. And at the time, because of course request numbers, those courses were being told to students that they wouldn't be offered. And I made joke of one earlier with our student of the month in terms of AP Computer Science as an example. So my biggest concern here is if approving ASL, and again, I see Mrs. Ernst like, yeah, Miss Ernst, sorry. I see Ms. Ernst like, yeah, I think that would be highly welcome among the students. My concern is, one, based on course requests and what students might take away about whether or not we can offer that. And two, my other understanding is in these specialized teacher areas, it is extremely difficult to find Latin teachers, sign language teachers, chemistry teachers, so on and so forth. So the other thing that if we approve this, I don't even know that we necessarily find staff for that.
But we don't want to be last on this. We don't want to wait to where we're only posting the job in May and then we're scrambling and we're informing students like we almost were with Spanish 4 this year, where we were on the verge of not offering Spanish 4. We want to get this, again, following the process and keeping you all involved. We want to post these so we can be first and not last.
Good point.
Mr. Crowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Abstain?
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
13.4, it is recommended the board approve the resolution declaring transportation to be impractical for certain identified schools.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
13.5, it is recommended the board approve the following extended field trip. Current 5th and 7th grade students traveling to Panama, June 7 through the 14 of 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
13.6, it is recommended the board approve the following donations. $100 each donated to the Big Walnut Middle School Veterans Day Breakfast. Big Walnut Middle School Principal Fund, number 018, 9002, donated by Rourke and Sons Automotive, Folds of Honor Scott and Heather Alexander, Newman Roofing LLC, Amy Moore, Amanda Micah, Foreman Realties, Firehouse Tavern, and Evans Insurance Agency. $1,500 donated to Big Walnut Middle School Veterans Day Breakfast, donated by the Veterans of Foreign Wars of Ohio. Charities going into the same fund. $1,050 donated to the Big Walnut High School FFA, donated by the Big Walnut High School FFA alumni, going into the Big Walnut High School FFA Fund 200-9330. $250 donated to the Big Walnut High School National Honor Society, donated by the Sunbury Chiropractic, going into Big Walnut High School National Honor Society Fund 200-9710.
So moved.
Second.
When ready, Darren.
Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Thank you to those organizations. Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Item 14. All HR items are pending receipt of successful background checks, verification of experience, and completion of all necessary documentation. 14.1, it is recommended the board accept the following resignations. Sean Urbano from Big Walnut Middle School, second shift, district custodian, effective at the end of the day on November the 11th, 2022. Rebecca Weiland, Souders teaching assistant, effective at the end of the day on November 18, 2022. Kim Ishler, Big Walnut High School head cook, effective at the end of the 2022-23 school year due to retirement. Jennifer Restucci, PRE fourth grade teacher, effective at the end of the 2022-23 school year due to retirement. Nadine Adams, Big Walnut High School science teacher, effective at the end of the 22-23 school year due to retirement.
So moved.
Second.
When ready, Darren.
Stand by.
Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Before going on, Mr. President, I want to
Yes.
say congratulations to those retiring employees, Ms. Restucci, Ms. Ishler, and Mrs. Adams. I checked with Mrs. Castiglione before the meeting tonight, and she shared with me that Ms. Restucci is a beloved PRE veteran. She's also a veteran of GRE and BWE. She's been a great team player and has always provided a laugh for her colleagues. Best wishes in retirement. As I understand it, from personal knowledge, Mrs. Ishler is retiring at the end of the year in an effort to spend more time with her amazing daughters, their adequate husbands, and her beautiful grandchildren. I know Kim personally and wish her the best. And finally, Mrs. Adams, oh boy. Here's another amazing teacher retiring from the district. I have only known Nadine for a portion of her career here, but she's an extraordinary educator. She's taught biology, honors biology AP courses while I've known her. Let me say this, perhaps she's retiring because next semester she has Sam Fuji in her CCP biology course, and she's worried what that might do to her professional career. But ultimately, I personally feel blessed to have known Nadine and am pleased that she's going to be working with my son next semester. I certainly wish her the best as she engages with her children more through their professional careers. I thought it would be important that they hear that from a board
Oh, yes,
member.
me too.
As I know that they'll be recognized later on, but also as we just took action on them, I wanted to wish them all well.
14.2, it is recommended the board approve the revisions in employment for Macy Dolly, ELC second shift custodian from 5 hours a day to GRE second shift custodian, 4 hours a day effective November 7, 2022. And Keith Greathouse, Big Walnut High School head softball coach, revised from Group 2 to Step 5, Group 2, Step 5 to Step 2.
So moved.
Second.
There.
Mr. Crow,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
14.3, it is recommended the board approve to rescind the following. Resignation of Catherine Penrod, bus teaching assistant, effective at the end of the day on October 31, 2022. 90-day classified contract for Catherine Penrod, full-time bus driver, step 0, effective November 1, 2022. 90-day classified contract for Mary White, full-time bus driver, step 0, effective November 14, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Let me explain real quick.
Please.
You approved these at the October meeting, and maybe we were overly, because of our need and desire for bus drivers, we were overly ambitious on when they would complete their training. So Catherine Penrod is currently an aide. She was resigning as an aide so that she could be a bus driver. She hasn't completed her training yet, so we don't want to kick her out into the cold. So we would love to have her aid services until she's ready to make that switch. So basically, we're reverting back until they complete. So hopefully, we'll see those names again next month, and they'll be completed.
Thank you for that clarification.
I totally understand it all.
No,
Because you explained it to me.
Yeah, through no fault of their own. We were just, life happens.
Mr. Crow,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
14.4, it is recommended the board approve the following athletic supplemental contract for the 2022-23 school year. Steve Grimm, Big Walnut High School, assistant swim coach, Group 4, Step 5, or 7, excuse me. Mike Stump, Big Walnut High School girls basketball coach, volunteer. Alec Eichnicker, Big Walnut High School wrestling coach, volunteer. And Scott Nicola, Big Walnut High School wrestling coach, volunteer.
So moved.
Second.
Darren, when you're ready.
Mr. Crow,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
14.5, it is recommended the board approve a one-year contract for the following classified employees. Carrie Nichols, Souders teaching assistant, step 0, effective October 31, 2022. Melinda Miller, BWI teaching assistant, BWI step 0, effective November 28, 2022.
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Crow,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mrs. Nix,
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi,
Yes.
Ms. Ernst.
Yes.
14.6, it is recommended the board approve the classified contract for the balance of the 2022-23 school year for Carla Emmons, Big One High School, second shift custodian.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Crowe, this is the individual we had the pleasure of meeting while we were doing the building tour. Certainly glad she's there, and I think this makes the high school fully operational in terms of custodians.
Yes, so this is ending her 90-day probation period. Nothing but positives with Carla. Glad she's here at Big Walnut.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
14.7 is recommended the board approve a 1-year limited contract BA Step 0 for the following long-term substitutes to remain in effect through the completion of the current long-term assignment. Mackenzie Duffy, PRE Intervention Specialist, effective November 8, 2022. Vivian George, Big Walnut Middle School, Social Studies, effective November 8, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Crowe, I need to make an amendment to this. Mackenzie Duffy should be Souders and not PRE. Everything else remaining the same.
Duly noted.
Easy for you to say. He's got to actually type it in.
I'm giving him a minute.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
14.8 is recommended the board approve 90-day contract for Christina Simmons, Big One High School, Food Services, 3-hour day, Step 1, effective beginning November 16, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
14.9 is recommended the board approve the increase in pay for substitute bus drivers with less than 5 years of experience to $18.37 per hour, and those with 5 or more years of experience to $20.20 per hour, effective beginning November 16, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, and this is working with Tim and Darren in an effort to try to entice not only more drivers to be willing to substitute as bus drivers, but also rewarding some longtime Big Walnut drivers who perhaps have retired and have a willingness to drive maybe 1 or 2 days a week, but not for peanuts. So again, I know there was early on in the year, someone public participation talking about the need to increase our rate for substitute teachers. I am aware of that, and we're working to chip away at that. Right now, this one and the next one are addressing bus drivers and food service workers. So we've worked with Mr. Jenkins to make sure that we can afford this, and we believe we will, and hopefully this is going to assist the need for substitute bus drivers that we're currently facing.
2 things with regards to that. I know organizations across the country have stopped conducting quote-unquote exit interviews. What they've been doing is calling them transition interviews, because we should keep a relationship with our employee alumni as well. So the idea that we are attracting them back into a substitute position is very rewarding to me, and I applaud the effort. My question, Darren, is for Mr. Jenkins, is for you. This was calculated in the 5-year forecast approved earlier?
I would say it's not been calculated in the 5-year forecast, but I would tell you that I think that its effect on expenditures is going to be negligible, because we have individuals who are working overtime. We have individuals that can't we can't get routes. So in those cases, I understand I'm the bean counter around here.
I appreciate bean counters.
Well, I understand that, but let me put my educator hat on, Because what's happening currently when we can't fill bus driver positions, we're having to shorten the instructional day, and we have young people that are missing out on valuable instructional time. So if I can be an educator again for a while, I would tell you that it makes good sense educationally, and I think fiscally the effect's going to be negligible.
So what you're saying is, based on the overtime, you think it's actually going to wash out? to
Yes,
be
I
about
do.
Equal. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Crowell?
Put your bean cap back.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
1410, it was recommended the board approve the increase in pay for substitute cooks with less than 5 years of experience to $14.92 per hour. Those with 5 or more years of experience to $16.41 per hour, effective beginning November 16, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
No questions?
Kids got to eat.
Mr. Crowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
15, scheduling the next board meeting. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be December 15, 2022, 6:30 p.m. in these chambers. Streaming will be made available on the district website. 16, it is recommended the board enter executive session to discuss details relative to the security arrangement and emergency response protocols for the Board of Education to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, the personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development, assistance or to negotiation with political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance, to consider the employment of a public employee or official, and to confer with an attorney, the Board of Education concerning disputes involving the board that are subject to pending or imminent court action.
So moved.
That is under ORC 121.22.
Second.
Mr. Crowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Nix?
Yes.
Mrs. Graciosi?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
I have us going in to executive session at 9:03. I don't believe we will, out of executive session, have any other business other than to adjourn.